I absolutely love fried chicken, especially when it's in a fried chicken sandwich. And today I'm showing you my favorite vegan recipe for a fried chicken burger that absolutely blew my mind. So first off, we are pulling inspiration from Richard Mackin or School Night Vegan's chicken recipe. This is such a versatile recipe that I've started experimenting with recently. So first off, we're going to go into the wet mixture portion of the recipe, which uses silken tofu, butter beans, miso paste, and a couple of other subtle ingredients that, once blended together, form the wet portion of this seitan recipe, which we're going to use for the chicken breast itself. This is a really cool recipe which honestly blew my mind the first time I made it. It on the surface seems a little complicated, but after making it a few times it's really not too bad, and I find that it works great if you freeze them, and you can slice them up to have cold in salads or in pasta dishes. They work really well. So once the wet mixture is formed, I'm adding in some vital wheat gluten, and then I'm going to blend that all up together to form the seitan dough. And if you look closely, you can see at the top of the screen that my food processor starts to struggle and a little bit of smoke comes out, but that's okay. It's very common to have to split this up into two pieces, so highly recommend that, and then kneading by hand where necessary. So once that's done, I'm going to leave that to rest and just relax for an hour or so, and then split the seitan dough into 6 sort of chicken breast shaped pieces. Don't worry, I know these don't look very convincing right now, but trust me, trust the process on this one, and they will just turn out so good. So once these are formed, I'm going to leave them to rest for another hour or so. And once these are finished, once these are nice and relaxed, I'm going to roll them into a string and then tie them up. This is where that knot shape that these come into really adds the stringy chicken-like texture that makes these by far the best recipe that I've seen. And if any of this looks complicated, I promise if you give it a go, if I can do it, I promise you can do it. So here I'm tying these up with muslin cloth, which then goes into the chicken stock broth to simmer. I just use some vegan chicken stock cubes here, which works great as a quick alternative to give them some flavor. And you can see shredding this apart has a really cool, pretty convincing texture, which I was really pleased with. So I'm going to seal these up and store them in the broth in the fridge overnight. Next up is Ethan Chabowski's famous pickled red onion recipe. I love this recipe. It's super simple and a great staple to have in your fridge to add to pretty much anything. Here I use 2 types of vinegar, not because I'm being fancy, but because I was pretty much out of the vinegar that was in the jar, so I topped it up with some apple cider. Added some salt to some sliced red onions and some boiling water over the top, and it literally is as simple as that. Stir it up, and there you have it. Within half an hour, these are going to taste great, but the longer you leave them to pickle, the better. They taste so good, and highly recommend. Next up, I'm getting some aquafaba from a can of chickpeas to add an ingredient into the Burger Dudes recipe for these burger buns, which I, again, absolutely love. I think it's great to pull inspiration from all sorts of different places. This recipe really does come to life when you add in the addition of the aquafaba both in the dough itself and also, as you'll see in a minute, by brushing the tops of the rolls, because they get this amazing brown exterior. So fairly standard bread roll recipe with the addition of the aquafaba really does bring these to life. So leaving it to rest again for an hour or so, and then forming into 6 balls for the rolls to have a second prove. Once the balls have risen, as you can see, I'm brushing them with some aquafaba, which, again, if you ever open a can of chickpeas, make sure to, I know you've heard it a million times before, make sure you save it, use it for all sorts of cool stuff. Here I'm topping with sesame seeds, as is classic for a burger recipe. And then I'm going to be going with another one of Ethan's tricks, and throwing in an ice cube to help with the oven spring of these rolls, leaving them to brown in the oven. And I've got to say, pretty happy with the way these came out. I think they have a really nice exterior, and they just taste so good. Having fresh buns makes a world of difference. Onto slicing some of the toppings, some fresh tomato, seasoned with salt and pepper as is absolutely necessary, and slicing up some iceberg lettuce into thin strips. Onto the fun part, frying the seitan. So I've got a wet and a dry mixture here, both seasoned, which I'll include in the description, the seasonings that I used. Again, this follows the Richard Mackin recipe, which I highly recommend. And roughly 180 degrees C, these are going into some oil, and about 5 to 6 minutes on in the oil, and they came out looking pretty good. I gotta say, these look good, and hitting them with salt immediately, crucial step for anything you're deep frying, and just topping with a spicy mayo and the pickled onions. This was so good. Time to top the burger with the spicy mayo on the base, the fresh tomato, the chicken burger itself, and the shredded lettuce with a little bit of pickled onion on there just to add that acid kind of touch to it. This was so good, and a real treat. Not something I'd make every week, but when you've got the time and you want to have a little bit of fun, experiment with a classic made vegan, this is something I highly recommend and was so much fun to make. If you enjoyed the look of this recipe, or it's inspired you to make something fun, please stick around, let me know what you think, and drop any other tips you've got for great fried chicken recipes in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you soon.